parking requirements for town center were put in place. They were put in by a team of people, including engineers and traffic experts and Dutchess County Planning and Pace Law School and a wide variety of other people that were involved in putting together all of those things. I'm sure they were aware that the parking requirements in adjacent towns would require more, but they also understood that that would be true elsewhere in the town, and they deliberately picked ones less based on the assumptions that fewer would be needed because of the shared use, and this is the formula that they came up with. I guess my reaction is if a study by a third party came up and said it's adequate, I guess my thinking is that that team of people did a pretty good job of coming up with those standards that were not only sensible and but appear to have worked perfectly fine. I don't know that, assuming that the parking standards for other towns that don't anticipate this kind of development at all ought to be used as a model at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess that's my response to that. And it appears from you saying that it's reasonable, or it's fair, in fairness to our ordinance, that was anticipated, and it's a logical thing to do as well. You also said that when a community finds that parking standards out of line with other people, they ought to reevaluate it. Well, I don't know that I even think they are out of line, because as I said, I don't think any of these towns have an equivalent consideration for parking for this kind of a complex project. What I would guess that the planning board would do, if they were given some kind of project like this, is that they would look at their parking requirements and they'd try to determine whether less would be adequate. The developer for a project like this would probably go into, I don't know, Pleasant Valley and say, you know, these parking requirements may be fine for individual businesses, but when you put a project this size together, it doesn't make any sense. Can we negotiate something that's less, that makes more sense? And that planning board might very well ask them to do a parking study that would conclude what they needed, which is exactly what our board did as a double check. So I guess I lied and said I had a bunch of questions. I guess what I really wanted to do is just talk. But that's my reaction to this. I am not in the slightest bit concerned about the parking requirements for other towns, because they didn't anticipate anything remotely like this. And the fact that there is an actual study that was done by a professional group, which by your own statement is a national group that's widely accepted, I don't know, it seems to me they determined that our regulations were put together and designed well. Right, I'm done.
Where do you think they missed the mark? I mean, you're quite a bit, 20 to 50%. Where do you think they missed the mark?
I think the biggest disparity was in how residential uses were calculated. But again, as Supervisor Bell noted, the town center, the zoning district in which it is proposed, was created with the idea to increase density. That's why I included in my report, I felt was in fairness, that should be included. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the towns surrounding Lagrange, it is possible that they have not had a development that is similar in scope to what is being proposed for town center. So they may not have had cause to reevaluate or take a closer look at their own standards. If they did, maybe they would make adjustments accordingly.
Is there any other information that you would request from the sponsor that would help you feel better or worse or change any of that work? Because you did state the lack of sufficient information would prevent you from having a real conclusion.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest request would be, as noted in the JCL letter from October 23, is a table that outlines by lots where the parking is located and how proximate is it to the various uses proposed within the site. If you look at the overhead map, the development is about a quarter of a mile north to south and a quarter of a mile west to east. Depending on how that parking is allocated and where the uses are located within the structures, you could have residents or customers looking at a pretty substantial walk from where they end up having to park to the final destination that they're going to. Having a more detailed accounting of how the parking is allocated within the site could give you a better idea of, whether there is an undue burden being created for access to one building or another, depending on what the parking is.
Area.
Yeah, correct.
So is there something we can ask of them to try to legitimize some of, we're off by a lot.
Ask me the developer?
Yeah.
Well, when it goes through the planning board
Well, wait a
is
minute.
also gonna
This
do
is,
that.
and we did get a letter, I'm gonna address that, Richie, but they're asking for a zoning change. This project was the vision of this town for 25 plus years. We've changed a lot in 25 plus years, and it had no sunshine laws, which means basically most projects every, how many years is it now, 3?
So I think what you're referring to is once a subdivision plat is filed with Dutchess County Clerk, they're protected from future zoning amendments for 3 years.
Right.
But we don't necessarily have, if you look at the Rolling Meadows projects, it's received a number of reapprovals.
But we
since
don't have to. We could say no.
So they have not finished the planning board process.
You're talking about Rolling Meadows here,
I'm
right?
talking about town center.
Oh,
They're
no,
still
no,
planning
that's right,
board.
tax that.
So
right.
my
So there's
point,
no-
the
there's no
point
3
is,
years
there would be
kicking
no
in.
sunset clause to be, because
Right, and
that
I'm fine with
comes
that,
in when you get
and it's been
approvals.
the vision, I have heard concerns even from the planning board people themselves, which aren't here anymore, but that basically, they feel that they're forced to follow our laws, which is true, that's what they're forced to do, they feel that if we pass it. Now, in town center, we've had, for 2 years, they've been proposing to the planning board to increase the size of buildings when we haven't voted or addressed it, that's what's coming in front of us now. So,
That's for elevators and that,
But-
where
but-
they
but-
didn't have elevators.
but the bottom line is, that was in front of the planning board for the last few years. This board has never considered it yet.
It was in front of the planning board for purposes of secret. They are still going through the site plan application.
Right.
So
But-
the planning
And
board has
all
not
of those
approved it.
changes were presumed in the environmental review as well.
So my big concern is, to me, you're right, there's not much, this town center is in the 11th hour. They've got preliminary approvals, however, things have changed, which gives us some leverage, and I feel some reason to look at this. They're asking for zoning changes for bigger buildings. They're asking for a $30 million pilot. We were just starting negotiations on that. Alan had what he thought he wanted, I had what I thought he wanted. And now we're moving ahead with the zoning changes, which I don't even know what you want for the pilot. It just, to me, it should all be done at once. I've got a letter from Cutting and Feder basically saying that I'm interfering with the planning board process, and I disagree. First of all, this study was done months ago in agreement by the entire town board. I'm not sure if we all agreed to it, but it was majority. And that's why, because this is an expensive report, which we paid for. Because we wanted to make sure we were comfortable with that. But it wasn't me, it was the town board. And for me to say that we needed an engineer, meaning an engineer to answer questions on a law that I'm changing, not to interfere with the planning board. If it's a law that I'm changing, I should have a professional lawyer, a land use lawyer, which I'm requesting now, and I'm requesting an engineer to ask questions based on laws that we don't have to change.
So I just point out 20 years of land use experience.
Okay? Well, okay, so you may be the person, but you're the planning board law attorney.
I am.
So I don't know if that's right.
Well, I won't be your attorney in
Right,
September,
so,
so.
whatever, so I'm just saying, this wasn't me, this was the whole town board. We kind of tabled this because we also felt we would like to see town center get cut a little bit in lieu of a $30 million pilot and maybe a little something else like a senior center. And that's why I feel this should have been done all at once. It shouldn't be, the zoning changes shouldn't be in front of us piecemeal, and that's why it was removed from the agenda 4 times in the last year. But the board now has allowed it to go forward. Now we have, that's why, parking came forward now because it was an issue. It might have fixed itself if we cut back, I don't know. But also, which is not being considered, we did a zoning change. Town center is the only place we allow 3 stories, correct? In that 3 stories, you are not allowed to have only one set of apartments in the multi-use building. You are now allowed to put apartments stacked. That wasn't reviewed in the parking analysis. That was after the parking analysis, correct?
So are you asking the applicant, because I can answer to the extent that they have not changed any of the
Right,
residential
but
units.
still,
It is
they
2
haven't, but
floors.
they're allowed, technically, you can put apartments in every single one of those. You might have to come in front of the planning board, but these are laws that the town board is changing. I do think we're allowed to have professionals answer our questions, because,
I'm not following exactly what you're saying, but.
in other words,
But we
when you
haven't,
did the parking analysis,
we haven't changed the the number of residential units or the square footage of the commercial uses at all for many years. And so.
up until
part-
this year, you could
So-
only, up until 2024, you could only put 1 apartment in each multi-use building, not 2. Because it's 3 floors. Under the town code, you were only allowed to put 1 apartment in 1 business. In other words, you would have, say, a restaurant down below, you would have 2 units above. One of those would have had to be office, not residential.
That's not,
And that was done after the parking study.
Yeah,
that's not a town center code.
Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying, but I can tell you is, with regard to parking, we haven't.
Change the count yet.
We haven't changed the count of anything. We've based the count of the zoning code's parking
Right.
demand based upon the number of residential units and the square footage of commercial use, assuming different uses.
Right.
And that's what we used. We determined what the zoning code requires as the parking requirement. We comply with that.
But your use is the whole complex? I don't know. Is your use, you have 610 units.
All we're focusing on is the mixed use part.
Right, but the mixed
Yeah.
use,
We'll bring the other part in later, but based upon the mixed use part, all of the parking spaces required are in the mixed use area. Now, as part of the site plan review, the planning board had said to us that they are going to look to make sure that parking spaces are reasonably near the demand generators, and that's fine. But we comply with the town's zoning code without asking for any waivers. And the ULI study, which is, as far as I'm aware, the most comprehensive and most authoritative study of what is required in communities like this, shows that we have more than enough parking. So we have not added anything.
all I'm saying is right now in your multi-use building, you can build your first building and you can put 2 sets of apartments in the entire first building where you couldn't before.
We have counted every apartment in determining parking demand. From the beginning, we had the same number of apartments as we do today.
But what I'm just saying is, I don't know if you're gonna plan on come back in front of the planning board, but basically you were only allowed to build 1 apartment above each commercial space. That's 2 stories, 3 stories.
Well, like I said, I don't know what you're referring to, but I do know that
You
we're
know what I'm
talking about a
But
configuration.
that local law didn't change
Don't
town
fall for it.
center,
He's
it
playing with
changed
you.
outside of town center. So they've always been allowed to do 2 stories above the commercial.
No, I don't
Yes.
recall that. So you're telling me,
Right, you have
They're
2
the
stories
same
above
now.
commercial in a number of your buildings,
Yeah.
correct?
for residential,
For residential,
We have a.
and that was always allowed?
yes,
I thought that needed a zoning change.
no,
Oh, because Ken made an interpretation.
no, your code allowed
Right, he
that
said
height, and
that.
it
But the
still
new
does.
zoning administrator said, no, that's why we had to do the change. Okay, I remember that.
I think you're talking about the predominantly on
No,
the first
Ken,
floor.
yeah, that's right. So basically, Ken determined it one way, and the new zoning administrator determined it another way.
I
That's
don't think that's what happened.
Well, then why
Code
did we have
allows
to?
allowed 3 stories. You did a local law last year that reduced that for everything outside of town center.
Then why do we have to change that law for town center?
What
It
you
had to
changed,
do with the definition of, how much of it was residential versus commercial.
Okay.
And that's when we changed from predominantly, which is kind of a vague word, to the first floor has to be entirely, retail or commercial.
With the
if you will.
exception of entrances, mailboxes,
Right,
some
right.
small.
And then the other floors can be any mix of anything at all.
Right,
If you viewed predominantly as meaning more than 50%, then there would have been issues. But that definition had never actually been applied, so when we did the zoning change, we were just trying to clarify it and make sure that we understood how it would apply when approving projects. But what the applicant's point is, irrespective of that code change, their proposed uses, and therefore the number of parking spots that would be required hasn't changed from the beginning.
Okay, okay, I got it,
That's-
but we're
that's what the
still,
point-
we got a mistake somewhere, somebody's making a mistake, it's 20 to 50% off.
I don't agree with that.
I
I
don't
don't
think
agree
that-
that that's a
I
mistake.
don't
I've
agree
explained why
that
that
is the
is.
conclusion. What they're
So-
saying is other communities, but the zoning is not the same. And also, I don't think, with all due respect, I don't think the assumption that just because other communities require more means we have to require more. County planning is constantly coming back with the fact that we're over parking in areas.
Did we, I mean, I don't know where to go from here, but if somebody's wrong on the wrong end, it's disaster. That's one thing, okay, so let me move on to a little something else here. I agree with this letter that I have to be careful, but the bottom line is, I'm not interfering. This board asked for it. If you want zoning changes from me, I think I have a right, and I will get the land use attorney to answer that, to answer questions of what right I have. Now, on the flip side of this, we don't have to give you zoning changes. They put it back on because this board is divided right now and been voting the other way, which is the opposite way they voted a year ago. But in my opinion, you want a $30 million pilot, you want zoning changes, you want buildings that are 200 and something feet versus 100 and something feet. I just think we should have closed this out in one deal through meetings, because we are losing all our leverage, which I think is extremely irresponsible of this board. So if the board wants this project cut a little bit, it would have been a good time maybe to get something for a $30 million buyout, which means the taxpayers are gonna foot the bill for the next 20 years. It's a great project, I'm not against it, I just think we have to be extremely careful that we get it right. It is probably, what's the percentage of this project of the whole town in growth, just in one project? What is it, about 20%, 15 to 20?
Population,
Yep,
In terms of
no, it's
population.
more than that.
I believe it's somewhere between 10.
Yep, it's like 15 to 20% in one project. So to say we have no say is absolutely wrong. If we give up all our leverage, we will have no say. But all I'm saying is we gotta figure this out. And I don't know, I don't have the answers. I'm not a professional, but what do you think? To get it right. And right now we've got,
I got one other question. So we look at Washington, we look at, what was the other community you mentioned, Clinton or the other one?
Yeah, the other one was,
Pleasant Valley. So none of those communities have the, project that we're considering or will be.
Town of Washington has minimum 20 acre zoning for most of its town.
So
So,
that's
no.
kind of why, I guess, I don't feel like it's apples to apples in terms of.
Town of Poughkeepsie probably has the closest with Eastville.
did you look at,
So
did you look at Eastdale at all?
That's-
what?
Eastdale?
Um,
Town of Poughkeepsie.
yeah, we looked at Poughkeepsie.
And well, how was that?
And Poughkeepsie came in at 1,385 versus 1,099 for the range.
They're 200 more than us.
100.
Be interesting to know whether Eastdale actually meets the documented requirements in their code, or whether they made the case to build less to the planning board because of the shared parking. I don't think we know that for sure.
I just think it falls on us now. We're gonna make code changes and this and that, but, and that's, I just feel, I didn't expect this, to be honest with you. And it's just something I wanted to check, you know what I mean, and the board agreed, you know, the board wanted to check. I love town center projects still. I think it's a little big for our community right now. I think 15 to 2,000 cars coming out. On 55, it's McDonald's and it's the mobile. It's in the red here every day in GPS from 4:30 to 6. is gonna be a lot, but, I mean, it's just one aspect, but you're right, we only have so much we can do as a board, but I feel this board has a lot of leverage, especially with the pilot, law changes, but if we choose to ignore it, then we do not. So we are divided here, but just trying to get the facts. What's your recommendations to, they also have a study too, like what is a fair way to get these questions answered so we can get to the bottom? Is there a fair way as,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Is there-
something down.
One of the things that Matt and I talked about too is, I think it's critical to look at when some of the studies were actually done, right?
That's something I heard from the planning board, that they felt some of the traffic studies were done at wrong times, and I don't know what those
If,
are.
if a study is done during the middle of COVID,
Right.
which was a very different
Were they?
time in our world in
Mhm.
New York, then, that would tend to be something that, we would certainly recommend that you critically look at, in related to how that impacts, the development.
Yeah, I mentioned previously, in Plattsburgh, we did traffic counts both when SUNY Plattsburgh was in session and when it was not, because when it is in session, the population of the town has increased by about 20–25%. And that's COVID would have a similar depressive effect on
university
part of
would-
the counts that you might observe.
One of the impacts is our very large high school that's on the end of the road here.
And I'm not sure the study works.
And the high school only allows seniors to park in the lot, right? We all had kids at the high school. So they're parking all the way up, different places up the street, and that's within walking distance from that development would be within walking distance of the high school. So you could, when Matt talks about shared use, that's part of the issue, is if you've got a restaurant at one end of the development, it's very, very likely that, they would, park where they're quote unquote not supposed to park, right? To eat at the restaurant, so.
Well, a couple of things. So our traffic study was done a couple of times, and it was done after COVID, and it was done when school was in session, when school was not in session. All these things that you're recommending were things that the planning board recommended as well.
What is your backup time? What did they, I haven't seen any.
I'm
just wondering what it,
I
because
couldn't-
obviously we have a small one now.
I can't quote the traffic study,
Right,
but
okay.
I
You
know.
have the date on the traffic study?
I believe, I don't know, but I know that the planning board asked that question. I know that
I believe the
it was-
finding
it was
statement is right
satisfying.
on our website.
Because I know when Stewart's did the traffic
COVID
study the
ended
second
in
time,
May
they
of
went up 25%.
2023, and the parking study was September of 2023, right?
Right, so COVID
So-
was 2020, 2021.
When
So
was
you're
that?
talking within months of that major event.
$24 months.
COVID was March of 2020 when it started, and the worst of it was 2020 and 2021, so this was well after that,
It was 22? Is that-
23.
All right, I don't know, I didn't expect this, but I do think we have to make sure we get this right.
Yeah. We're on the right track.
Any other questions from the board?
No,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
thanks. Next up is an amended resolution related to changes in zoning code. Do you want to summarize what's changed for us, Rebecca?
So in the course of working on some other matters, there was actually a reference that the local laws to be amended in compliance with town law. That actually is an inconsistent sentence, because a local law is adopted pursuant to municipal home rule law. Town law provides for ordinances. So this is clarifying that our public hearing notice period is 5 days pursuant to municipal home rule law.
This is for the town center zoning thing?
No, this
No.
is for the amendments to your procedure to consider zoning amendments, completely unrelated to anything else we've been talking
Do
about.
these changes have to be comments from the county?
And what we've already submitted, it was not a substantive change, so the county's already let us know that it does not need, they've already come back that it's a matter of local concern.
Do I have a motion to accept the amended resolution?
No, it's just here, because the hearing is on the 2nd. So
Do
it's
we have
just-
to do anything?
Nope, it's just here so that the change, that one little tweak we made.
Okay, so at the public hearing, we will be considering the amended resolution rather than the one that we introduced.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Next up is Manchester Sewer District. You may recall that when we were voting on moving forward with a number of contracts, there was a question of whether to include the phosphorus removal requirement with the existing contracts or to farm that out to another engineering company. And I was asked to ask engineering, another engineering firm for their analysis of whether the estimates that were being given by Clark Patterson related to that were reasonable or not. I sent that to MJ for the review. They came back and said two things. They said, first of all, the estimates seem reasonable, and second of all, they said that we should consider packaging it with the other work rather than doing it separately, because there would probably be a reduction in costs if we packaged them together rather than doing them separately. So I think that answers our question that said that the estimate's reasonable and it would make sense to have it done as part of the overall project with CPL rather than you doing it as a separate effort. So that's the recommendation.
Why don't we just ask our two engineers to give us a price, and if they're higher, fine, if they're not, no.
Because that's not what we voted to do. We voted to ask whether the estimate we got was reasonable.
I don't remember voting. Was the split vote again? I don't vote for that.
I don't believe so. I believe
I wouldn't have voted to do CPL anymore. They already got 2 years' work.
Okay, so we're not going anywhere with this tonight, so.
Well, let's put a motion on it. I think we should put it to bid to the two engineers. I'll make that motion.
I'm not gonna vote for that.
Well, you don't have to vote for it.
All right, do I have a second?
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye, all opposed?
Let's wait till Susan gets here.
But we don't need Susan. Do you agree we should ask for a price for the two engineers, and whoever's cheaper gets it, right? If CPL's cheaper, you can have it.
Well,
Why wait?
because we already got it.
You want to give more work to CPL? You ran on that, Mr. Ryan, but okay, we'll table it.
We'll table
I mean, in fairness, I think he was still speaking, so I don't know what his point was before, okay.
Right, so you made a motion to get two estimates, it was seconded by Kelly, and then of course.
it. I believe it's a 2-2 vote, 2-4-2
Okay.
against. All right, next up is a request from the comptroller. She has a RFP for audit services that she's asking for us to go out. I presume this is an RFP to consider different auditing firms for next year's auditing, since we're in the middle of doing this year's. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second, all in favor? Aye, all opposed? There's a second one here that has to do with reinvesting cash escrow deposits. I talked to her and she's withdrawn that request. This is a revisiting of the issue. We've had a couple of people insisting that our code requires us to put these things in interest-bearing accounts. She was under the impression that they were correct when they were saying we have to do that, when I explained to her that our attorney has informed us that we don't have to, and that just means that if they are an interest-bearing account, we don't get to keep the interest. It gets to go back to the applicant, but we don't put them in there. So she's
It's a ton of paperwork.
right, and I said that to her. I said, you know, that interest all has to get reported for IRS reasons.
That's why no one
And I
does it.
said, nobody does it. She believed the person when they said we have to do it, and I explained to her that's not actually true. Okay, so next up is a town board waits a 30-day waiting period for the Tito Kitchen Corp. There's a note from the building inspector saying there's no violations there.
Make that motion.
All in favor? Aye, all opposed, carried. Next. The town board to consider reimbursement of expenses allegedly occurring following a water main. I can summarize the deal here. The H2O changed a water meter. They say that the plumber who put in the meter checked for leaks and everything was fine when they left. The homeowner says that there was a leak some period of time after that, less than 24 hours, I might point out, and that the plumber who they called to repair it said that the meter installation had been done improperly, and that's why there was a leak. They are appealing to us to make them whole financially for the plumber's work. The problem with that, as I understand it, is I don't think we can use taxpayer dollars to reimburse somebody for work done by a third-party firm. And so I believe what Rebecca is going to recommend is that we consider their claim, if you will, and we turn it over to our insurance company to determine what, if anything, they want to do about it.
Why not ask H2O? We give them millions of dollars of work.
Well, like I said, they insist that the work was done.
But H2O
And they're gonna
likely
allow it.
has insurance for this very reason. What will happen is when we deliver it to
Got it.
our insurance company, they
They have
tender
that.
it to H2O.
And they'll take care of,
I was just as worried that we're getting too many claims, you know what I mean, if we can avoid a claim. I mean, hey, you gotta warranty your work for some period.
A lot of people file notices of claims with municipalities because they always think it's an easy way to get money and they're quickly,
You're basically
Schooled on
two
the
chairs,
fact.
something there, so that- I'm okay with that.
Right.
Motion.
We don't have to make a
Yeah,
motion.
that's.
We're good?
Because we're not doing it.
All right.
Lastly, we have a late request from the Hudson Valley Cold Pressed Oil Annual Sunflower Festival, asking us to make an oral resolution that we have no objections to them obtaining a beer, wine, and cider permit for the month of August. This is an annual request, right?
Yes.
We do it with
So,
the-
the
Yeah,
motion-
every year.
Motion.
Wait,
Yeah.
and the second part is just for them to have signs only during hours of operation.
Yes,
Okay.
motion.
Al made a motion, Kelly seconded, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carried. That concludes our agenda. Does the town board have any comments or discussion at this
Thing is,
time?
we keep forgetting Airbnbs, we're gonna get it on the agenda. Are we waiting on something?
No, I
I
don't think
thought
we
you all
really
had
are.
drafts for review and were giving comment to the supervisor.
We,
We're there.
there is a, Richie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got an email from folks at Airbnb asking if they could essentially come in and talk to us about this, right?
Because they provide the insurance.
Yeah, but it's not only Airbnb, it's any company.
Oh, short-term rental.
That's true, but,
100%.
but
They have a,
they've obviously dealt with numerous municipalities and might have.
and so
some
I
kind
mean,
of
I'd love to
insight
ask
for-
them if they require buildings, like windows to code, look what happened in.
CO, they make.
So here's my question. They have asked to meet with us. I would ask them to come to a board meeting
Absolutely.
and answer questions. Does that sound good with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take care of that. Yeah, we'll take care of that.
So we'll have that on for the next meeting, and we can discuss.
If they can be here at the next meeting, they will. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Anything else?
I think that's good.
Do we have a motion to open for public comment and questions?
Motion.
I'm sorry, does the attorney have anything this evening? Okay. All in favor? Aye, opposed? Questions and comments from the public this evening? Sir?
David Machia, Town of Lagrange. I had a few things, just a quick reminder is that our election is June 24th and that you can early vote until Sunday.
That's not on the agenda, so if you could keep the topics to
fine.
something that's on the agenda rather than your agenda, that would be good.
In consideration to the comptroller withdrawing her request,
Right.
it seems that every time we've had a comptroller who's learned that the code says they shall pay interest, and then your attorney says, well, you don't have to follow the law, they seem to resign, so.
Your characterization of that's false wall, which I
Just let
explained
him
when you're
continue
done.
speaking, nobody really listens to him anyway, so.
Because they have fiduciary duty, not to listen to you. It's odd, I'm finding it odd that every time there's something to do with engineering, Mr. Rabasco keeps saying, oh, we need to ask our engineers, our two engineers, to give us a bid on what it's gonna cost to look at a price of something. You know, every single time, we need our engineers to look at it, we need our engineers.
Well, if we
and-
have a
And
price.
when you go out to bid, you actually have to pay your engineer to set up going out to bid.
Right.
So, it's getting
No, don't argue
expensive,
with them.
and, I mean, that guy was here for a parking study, you went into all this other stuff, it just really seems like you're getting a cut.
That's what it seems like?
Yeah.
Stop, don't answer them, just don't, it's not worth it.
And you keep asking, keep saying, we have this leverage, we have this leverage. Well, what are you asking them for? Are you asking them for 50 cents on the
No
dollar?
comment.
Like, you keep saying, we have this leverage, what do you want? What is it you want from them?
I would just like to state that, to my knowledge, no controller has ever resigned because of an alleged escrow issue. And I'd like to know that when you knowingly make false statements, there is legal liability to that.
And I called every town in our area, and none of them collect interest for escrow.
And it
So they're all
also,
breaking the law?
but the more important thing is, it is an incorrect reading of a very clear language that does not say.
So tell us what it says.
have to.
It says shall.
It says,
Shall.
I'm sorry, am I speaking or are you speaking?
Go ahead, read it to us.
Where does it say it has to be put in a cash escrow account? It says cash escrow accounts shall be reinvested, but where in the first instance does it say? No, you're not a lawyer. You pretend to be a lawyer. You Google all the time. You think you know. You
It's
got
our
10
own town
followers
code.
on YouTube.
It's our
Why don't
own
you
town
just sue
code.
us then if you think it's such a big
It
deal?
says shall.
You're wrong. You are just simply wrong. You are a narcissist who thinks they know everything, and you're always wrong.
Okay, it's my turn.
It's my turn.
It's my turn. What I would say is this, because the wording is different in two different parts of our code, as a matter of fact.
Stormwater
The
and money.
sec-
Sorry.
That seems unlikely. The portion that is referenced continuously says that cash escrows shall be reinvested. It does not say that the money has to be put into a cash escrow account that accrues interest at all. Meanwhile, in another section of the code, I believe that deals with mining, there is a specific provision in it that says that the bonds shall be put in a cash earning escrow. So the wording is different in the two different places. And the wording is different in two different places for reasons, because we don't just carelessly put things inconsistently. And in one case, it requires a cash, an interest-bearing account, and the other one it does not, but it says that if it is in a cash-bearing or in an interest-bearing account, that the interest would go to the applicant rather than the town keeping it. And that's the distinction, and I don't want any more discussion about it. Ma'am?
First of all, I appreciate your questions, Al, and digging into things, because I want to know more about it, so I appreciate what you do. About the town center, Eastdale is a nightmare. The traffic there is a nightmare. The school here is a nightmare, and trying to get through 55 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is a nightmare. So my question is, are you opening the comp plan? Because I think we need to reestablish the moratorium so that the residents can be heard and how they feel about this huge 600-unit complexes coming in here with all the stores.
The answer to your question is the board has decided to forego the comprehensive plan until next year when there will be a new board. And the second thing I would observe is that the moratorium that was in place would have had no effect on town center at all. In fact, it specifically exempted that entire project, if I recall. And so any moratorium that is put in place would have to be structured saying that you're going to put a moratorium on some particular type of development, and what your reason for having the moratorium might be. And I would be surprised if this board would actually approve a moratorium that would affect town center.
Yeah, it's true that town center, it didn't affect town center. The moratorium, town center has its own issues as far as, like, they're gonna seek a pilot. That has to get voted on by this board. they need these zoning changes, which are now in front of the board, which I think were premature, but Richie and Susan flipped. You know, for 8 months, they were one way, and now they've gone the other way. So we haven't voted on it. They voted to remove the moratorium, but I'm gonna make sure it's gonna go to a vote. I'm okay. The argument I think that they're feeling is the new board, tell me if I'm wrong here, should do the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan for the rest of the town takes, a year and a half, so this board will never be voting on it, it'll be the new board. So I say we should start the process, it's very important, otherwise we can't have the floodgates open for 2 years.
Right, exactly.
So, in my opinion, I feel it's political suicide, but they can decide it, but once it gets out, that if they're gonna extend it, which we haven't put it to a vote yet, they voted for it, by the way. It's been voted to open a comprehensive plan. We have not voted to yet officially to say no. And I will make that vote happen. I would have tonight, but Susan's not here, so it's unfair to do so. I feel if their logic is they want the new board, which nobody knows who the new board will be technically, which to me it shouldn't matter because the people give the input. Who cares what the board is? But I get their point. Everybody's got a valid point. I would probably be okay with that as long as the moratorium was put back in place. Because we got another town center that wants to go in, we'll have hundreds of more. We already have 1,000 apartments and 2,000 houses on the books.
Right.
We don't need, so that's a big discussion that Richie and Susan are gonna have to decide at the next meeting. And I'm willing to accept that if that's what they want. And really, they outvote me if Alan's the tiebreaker. But I just think it would be irresponsible not to have the moratorium on, because then you just open the floodgates, it doesn't matter what the people say.
Exactly, I agree with that.
All right, so that's where we are, and we'll probably address that at the next meeting, and we are in talks on it.
I want to be clear, if you're gonna place a moratorium again, it's gotta go through another local law.
I know, I realize it, because they let it expire and they voted not to extend it. But the bottom line is, I don't think we do it 2 ways. We agreed to open unanimous the comprehensive plan because they didn't want to have a moratorium. You can't have it both ways. I mean, it's been 25 years. And it didn't include town center. Town center is a separate issue, but I do believe the town board also has negotiating power there that we're throwing away. And I just want to be fair. Listen, I'm not against town center. It's here. The Riegers have invested tons of money. They're great people to deal with. They're good business people. I am not against that project. I just think, big factor is cost of sewer. We didn't know that. I tabled it because the argument is, say they cut 100 units, let's say. The cost would be the same to build a sewer plant. And that's a good argument on their side. So I kind of tabled it, trying to determine, hopefully in the near future, what that cost is, so that we could be fair with a person who has, this was the vision of the town. I give them, they invested their life and, a lot of money. I'm sympathetic and I'm not anti-development. I just want to make sure we close out this town, and if town center fills us up, that's it, right? I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
That's what the comprehensive plan, for me, is for. Because we are facing a huge town center, no matter how we negotiate, that's a big project. So we have to be responsible, and if we don't put moratoriums in place, we're not being responsible.
Exactly, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Sir?
Dick Dawson, Roseway Road. I was very confused at the last meeting when you turned down the moratorium, all right, and then you put a comprehensive plan in place, figuring you've got to start planning on everything before you allow all of the applications to come in. So all of a sudden, it seems like you put the cart before the horse. I think you got to have a plan, all right, and make sure that, like just for example, on the town center, which has nothing to do with this, the parking spaces, that's an issue. If you don't have some old type of plan, you're gonna have parking spaces unknown because people are gonna request everything. So there is I would have to say, a set of choices you gotta make first. Look at everything first under the comprehensive plan. Then you can open up whatever you want. But not to do that right now. You're exposing everything in the town. I don't know if you can even handle all of your applications that might be coming in, because it seems like there's a lot of pressure on Lagrange and the town and the, all the things they wanna do, all right? Like Eastdale, exploded, all right? Do you want that all to happen here? Because it becomes a nightmare after a while. I think comprehensive plan should be done, and then let the residents vote on it, all right? Or input first on it, and then decide, all right, what has to happen. That's all.
Thank you. Other comments? Sir?
Hi, I'm Peter Turok from Duchess Farms, Memory Trail. I just have a few questions, because I'm learning stuff, so I'm trying to learn stuff. The 30-day moratorium on the liquor license, what's normally done and why is an exception being made?
The state law requires a 30-day waiting period for someone to get a permit for an alcohol permit for a temporary event. And what they've asked the town to do is waive that 30-day period, which would allow them to just get the permit more quickly. I got that right, Rebecca?
We do it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not an exception, it's the normal procedure for these, that a notice will go to the municipality.
Right.
The town center, I don't know much about it. I've heard stuff about it. I wanna know more. Do I go to the planning board, or how do I find out?
Oh, it's on the website.
There's a number of documents on the town's website.
The one on the town website shows the maps, everything.
All right, there's a couple of things, and I haven't looked into it, obviously. A couple of things I'm concerned about is the traffic, like everyone else has said. It almost seems like we'd have to have 2 lanes going each way to handle that. I'm concerned about that, concerned about what impact that'll have on the school and teachers.
What I would tell you is out on our website, the full environmental impact statement was done for the project. Sits out there, I believe, right?
I believe both the EIS and the finding statement. I'm not sure if the FEIS, I think that might have been missing.
Yeah. I believe that's out there, and that full environmental impact statement that was prepared by, and adopted by the planning board has economic impacts, including the schools, and the full-blown traffic analysis. All of that was incorporated in the environmental.
Website for that.
Right.
And that's the date of those, have they been done, updated in the last 5 years or so?
We were just talking about that. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. I think the original traffic study that was put into the environmental review was 2019, and then they provided an updated analysis with updated counts and anticipated counts in 2023, I believe. So the answer is yes, it's been done recently.
And so there's significant case law that environmental studies don't become stale. You have to show a change in circumstances. So the biggest example is COVID. So a lot of projects updated their traffic studies post-COVID to make sure that their traffic counts. Yeah.
And then one last quick question. I'm sorry, did you?
Last name?
What's that? Last name? Turoff. Turoff. Peter. What is a pilot? $30 million pilot?
Pilot is an acronym. It stands for payment in lieu of taxes. To put it as simply as I can, rather than a particular property owner having the property assessed and taxed in a normal fashion like everything else is, they enter into a mutual agreement with a municipal entity where both parties agree to a particular financial arrangement that is different than that for reasons that could vary a great deal depending on the nature of the pilot. With respect to this one, the state has a process related to economic development, which allows an applicant to apply to an independent agency called the IDA, is that right?
Yeah, industrial development agency.
Agency, which is an independent agency somewhat aligned with the county. It doesn't report into the county structure, but it's organized on a county level. The applicant can apply to that agency for their support in recommending a pilot of that kind, or actually approving on a pilot of that kind. Typically, the idea behind it is this: a development goes into place, and what they are asking for is relief in how quickly the assessed value would rise to allow the development to advance economically before it's paying full tax rates on the development. And the example I typically give to people is, let's suppose somebody has a factory, they're gonna double the capacity of the factory. If you double their assessment on as soon as the factory's done, that's before they've ramped up completely and have customers to fill it and are generating the revenue to do that. And so you allow them some number of years where it gradually increases instead of all at once. And the applicant has submitted an application to the IDA for their consideration. The IDA has final approval, but the IDA in Dutchess County at least has a habit of, or a practice I should say, of not approving those applications unless the taxing entities, namely the school and the municipality, say they support.
I'm sorry, I was gonna give you a little better example how one works. Usually, like say it's an apartment building, he doesn't pay any taxes while he's developing it and framing it, and that really doesn't cost the taxpayer that much because there's no services yet. When he completes that apartment, this is one part, doesn't mean this is gonna be our deal. He pays 50% taxes and it goes up 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 for the next 5 years. A lot of times it's given because they're bringing jobs to the community, whatever it is, but it stands for payment in lieu of taxes, so we have a right to ask for things like senior center, something in return.
Sure.
And, again, the town center was much more needed back when it started. It's different, but it's still a great thing, but that's what the pilot is.
So do they pay that or not pay that? The 30 million, what is?
Well, that's what they save.
That's what they save, okay.
That was a calculation of what they're gonna save over 30 years.
I would caution you.
Well, that was there.
I would caution you on that because they've submitted an application to the county. That application hasn't been acted on, and therefore we don't have any official recommendation at all. What you're referring to is a hypothetical one that we saw before they submitted to the county.
They're hypothetical.
When it comes back, it'll have whatever details that organization recommends and is asking for our input. And so that number is the number we saw. But
It's a generic number that
it was a draft.
of what they're gonna say.
It's not an official number of any kind.
But it's gonna be a big number like that.
But also, just for background, these IDAs don't make these decisions willy-nilly. They have policies that determine how tax exemptions over the term of the pilot are going to be granted, and there's considerations, and typically, pilots have gotten a bad name, I think particularly because there's one state assemblyman or state senator in the local area who's really publicized them, and I think it's somewhat unfortunate because you don't see projects get built if you don't work out a pilot because they're putting in the investment for the project, so therefore the scale of the taxes is modified to get that investment in.
The idea behind it, at least from the IDA's perspective, is that they are projects that without some consideration of this kind would not be financially feasible and therefore wouldn't get built at all. That's the idea behind it.
Okay.
Correct. And that's the idea behind it. When you do the math, the initial upfront investment is so high that it's not, that when you consider the immediate costs of the taxes all happening at once, the project no longer is feasible, therefore they're not going to get loans from the bank, therefore it's not going to get built. Therefore, this is a consideration to allow the development to proceed and ramp up to the point where it's contributing fully, because the alternative is not one that's paying full taxes, the alternative is nothing at all. That's the idea behind it. And that's that financial analysis is what the IDA does.
This was our vision 25 years ago, you know what I mean? It's evolved, and it's been in that process for that long. So time has hurt a little bit, but this was the vision for our town. And again, you know, they've had a lot of preliminaries, and it's a good project. We just gotta make sure we get it right in the times that we're in. That's my opinion.
And then lastly, this is my first town meeting. I want to get more involved, interested in what goes on here. I'm appalled at what you have to deal with as far
Thank you.
as
Thank you very
harassment.
much,
And
because
I
there's,
think it's wrong, and I wish something could be done about it.
Thank you, we do
Thank
too.
you, sir. Any other comments?
Wait till you see him
Do I have a
call us
motion to
assholes.
close the public comment period?
Motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye, all opposed?
Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No executive session.
No, I don't think we have.
Oh, okay.
All
Do I
right.
have a motion for the second vision?
Yeah, second.
All in favor? Aye, all opposed? Carried.
Any cash received pursuant to this section shall be maintained in an interest-bearing account, which interest shall accumulate during the life of the account and shall be refunded to the depositor when the cash is refunded. Any cash. Any cash. Per annum, interest on cash escrow deposits shall be reinvested in the account until the applicant and/or developer is released from liability. Shall be reinvested. They're just lying to us. Probably going to see a resignation. Just read the code to us.
I did.
No, you didn't. And Alan Bell definitely didn't.
I did.
No, you didn't.
I did. I'll do it right now. You want to put your little camera back on for your 10 followers?
No, it's fine. Read the code.
Yeah. And I'm a lawyer and I was trained in
Any cash received pursuant to this section shall be maintained in an interest-bearing account. Cash received shall be maintained.
And you know that they're all cash.
Okay, I know that you've received a cash deposit.
You're wrong.
Well, you're wrong. You just don't.
No,
know what to
I'm
read.
not.
Yes,
You're
you
always wrong.
are. You are wrong. I get that security footage. I can't be wrong when I'm reading the code. You still haven't read the code. It's right there.
You just read it to me and I'm telling you.
Okay, so what's wrong there? Any cash received.
Sue.
Okay, so I'm telling you the code, and you're saying because I'm right that I should sue you.
No, I'm not telling you right because you're a narcissist who only believes what's in his mind.
But it says
Get
any
help,
cash
sir.
received.
Get help. You are mentally ill.
You're telling our comptrollers bad advice.
Then I give advice, they can do what they want.
Well, the last one resigned.
You are so ill, it is so disturbing. The cost to everybody, the way you stalk people, is so
What are you talking about stalk people?
You stalk people.
Because I come to a board meeting?
You are frightening. And the fact that
If you're frightened that I'm here in a public space, then you don't deserve to be there. You're not fit for the job. This is a public space. You're up there with public servants.
The way you call people's daughters in college,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
you're lying. You're lying. You are a liar.
Whose daughter have I called?
Pathological liar. And you have no proof that I was ever present at the planning board pre-meetings, and you are posting that on Facebook. Defamation. Defamation. You are
Go
knowingly
for it.
false.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Go for it.
It's on your Facebook page right now.
Go for it.
So,
Yeah.
pathological liar.
Go for it.
Yeah, just like you can go for it.
I
You
can.
think I'm wrong, you can sue.
I'm just reading the law. I don't understand how I can read the law word for word and you can say it's wrong.
It is wrong. I checked it out with her, and I checked it out also with,
Then what does it mean when it says shall be invested?
if you're giving, if.
No, it says any cash. any cash
I would've
received.
changed the law if that was the case, and they said it's unnecessary.
It clearly says. It doesn't say anything else.
No town gives, if you collect it,
I'm
if you
just
put it in
tired of
your
being
bearing
stalked,
account, you have to
I'm tired of
give
being
it.
harassed.
It says
I'd like to
any
ask you,
cash.
we had 2 people resign from the building department while they're under investigation. The building department's not under investigation. What investigation? You invent things. There's no investigation of the building department.
Not, maybe that you don't know of.
Oh, maybe. You know something I don't know about?
Apparently.
I guess so. You invent things.
I'm inventing the law that I read right off the town code.
You just invent.
It says any cash shall be
I
invested.
think people got your number by now.
Yeah. And yours too.
Oh, yeah.
You're lying to the people with your attorney. It's so simple. Just don't lie to us.
How about we go both ways? How about you stop lying?
I'm not lying. I'm just reading the code.
You lie about everything.
How is it lying reading the code?
Because you're
I just read it word for word. Did I say anything other than that?
But why is this one issue the thing that you're the hill to die on?
Because it's right and you're saying it's wrong. It's the law. It says it right there. You're telling people that it's not true and it says it right there.
I'm saying it's not required.
It says shall. You can make up any rules you want, but the law is the law. You can't win that. I can't lose that. I'm not saying that. There's no argument. It says it right there.
So, there's also a lot of laws on your property and you've been violating up and your wife's probably going to go to jail.
There's no laws that I violated. Just because you make it up that farming is not permitted.
Found that. See, look,
No,
lies.
the judge didn't find that. No.
Lies, yes.
You don't know what you're talking about.
There's a
Just
court
because
record, please.
just because
Everybody
you
who
have an
follows him,
attorney tell a judge.
Versus Danielle Machia, you'll see that his wife is likely going to go to jail because of him.
This town attorney has lied to the judge, and it's on the record. Said that farming is not a permitted use in the RLD.
You're not a farmer.
You're going to try to put somebody in jail because you said that farming is not a permitted use in the residential low density, which is the only place, it's the only place. You guys are so corrupt. So corrupt.
And I'm tired of being stalked, so please stop.
You're in a public building. You have no expectation of privacy.
Calls to my office. I know everything you're doing.
I don't know your number. I don't know any office.
That's a lie. More lies.
Thought you worked for yourself. You've got other people stalking you. You should stop lying to the people. Crying? For a drama award. This is how people manipulate the public. That's ridiculous. Being up there is not easy. It's not an easy job. Nobody really wants to do it. It's crazy that I've been begging to be up there. It comes with the territory that people are going to be mad at you for making rules. It comes with the territory that people are going to criticize what you do. And that's why it should be important that you follow the law. And that when people make complaints, you listen to them. Look into it. Fix it. Don't lie to us. We need our officials to stop lying to us. We need you to vote. And we need to get a town attorney that's not incentivized to sue our townspeople. We have outside counsel. If we had a town attorney who worked for the town only, they would just be there making sure that the town doesn't make mistakes, like this one. They wouldn't be worried about making extra money suing our own people in our own community. They would be focusing on making sure the town doesn't make any mistakes, like passing laws incorrectly, not following procedure, and telling our comptroller not to put money in an interest-bearing account when our own town law says it must be done. It's reckless, and it's dangerous, and it's very expensive to the town and the taxpayers, because we're paying for that attorney to make stuff up. And we're paying for the liability. There's a lot of notice of claims. That's what you do when the town has wronged you, and before you can sue them, you have to issue a notice of claim. Then the insurance company comes in and pays it off because the town's always wrong. Not always, but often. These are dangerous people that we need to vote out. Please vote. Tomorrow is noon to 8 p.m. A few people will work late. We got Friday is 9 to 5, Saturday and Sunday 9 to 5. On Tuesday, the 24th, you can vote at 3 locations, but if you come to this town hall, you can vote at any of the 3 locations. But you can vote at this town hall. It's 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please vote. Thank you. Another clerk. They keep putting in a new temporary clerk.